To Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Right. Well, first, you should know, we polled our audience, this studio audience, right here, before our program. Are those numbers ready? Show them, Brian. Those of you gathered in our audience, we polled, and this was, you didn't have to say out loud, you voted secretly. 37% of the people here gathered support President Bush. 33% support you, Governor, and 16% support Jerry Brown, whereas 14% support Ross Perot. So, you appear before what is going to apparently be a predominantly supportive audience. Well, Governor, I don't have to tell you that looming over this camp... Why did you smile?
It was interesting math. 37, 33, 16, 14. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Doesn't it add up to 100? 10? 16 for... Almost. I do ask you to believe that this is a reasonably accurate reflection of the people here gathered. Right. Governor, Governor, you present yourself here as certainly open to questions about your character, which have loomed over this campaign and which are reflected in the polls. May I just characterize what I think may be some of the suspicions or the concerns of some Americans? You're a very powerful man for 11 years now in Arkansas. Professional male athletes have come to recently realize that the attention that comes to them can get them into trouble. And we can expect that attentions of single women have certainly been forthcoming to you as a powerful man who's not the homeliest guy on the block. And there is this question of whether you had engaged in adulterous behavior, not only with one person, but perhaps with more than one. The suspicion was fueled by Larry Nichols' allegation, in which he named several women who are alleged to have been intimate with you. May I ask you to speak to this issue generally as we begin our dialogue here? You know that is the suspicion out there, and I want you to have an opportunity to speak directly to it.
Sure, I don't mind talking about it. I would point out that allegations aren't the same thing as facts, and that Mr. Nichols dropped his lawsuit and basically acknowledged that he just picked up rumors and put them in a lawsuit, and that at some point all the people involved explicitly and specifically denied the charges. Now, compare that to what I said in the beginning, way back in the fall, when I started running for president. I went to Washington, D.C. to the National Political Press Corps, to a group called the Sperling Breakfast, with my wife. And we did something, as far as I know, was without precedent. We said, look, we've been together a long time, and we've had some problems in our marriage, and we want you to know that. We also want you to know that we're proud of the fact that we did not give up on our marriage. Instead, we stayed with it, we worked our problems out, and we're together. We thought that should be a source of strength, not an excuse for trying to tear down my record in public life, which I believe is exemplary, all the work that I try to do, and the fact that basically I've been pretty upfront with the American people. And you know, the really sad thing to me about this is that if we had, in the times of our difficulty, given up on our marriage and divorced, not one single story would have ever been run about this. This would never even be an issue. Now, I grew up in a troubled home where there was a divorce and a remarriage. I have no criticism of people for whatever decisions they make in life with regard to their marriage. But when two people clearly love each other and are clearly committed to each other, their marriage and their child, it seems to me to continue to sort of throw that punching bag up there is wrong. And I don't think that it's an example of bad character to admit you haven't been perfect. If you want a perfect president, you might as well just do a lottery, because you're not going to get one anyway. And you may have to start picking them by lottery if what happens now continues for other people. I mean, I'm fairly tough. I'm used to tough campaigns and personal attacks. I know that the image that many Americans have of me, solely by hearing all these negative things, they know nothing about my life, about the kind of family I grew up in, about my background, about what I've done as governor. I think it's sort of warped. I don't blame anybody for having a negative impression. But I'm telling you, if you're worried about whether you'd have a president and a first lady and a family, committed to their child, committed to the future of this country and other people's children, that is not a worry. People shouldn't worry about that.
Right. Part of the Slick Willie problem is caused by what some analysts see as your ability to deflect questions and give answers which really don't speak.
We need the ability in politics to deflect some questions. You folks would kill us if we couldn't.
Well, but that's true. Except that...
Thank you very much.
Except that the deflection makes the problem grow even worse. Let me just talk to you for a moment about Jennifer Flowers. Now, here's a woman who gave some very detailed information to the Star about visits to Dallas and numbers of visits to her multiple dwelling apartment, the Quapaw Towers, I think it was called. The man who ran the towers is quoted as saying he saw your car, had to move the state driver because he was in a no parking zone several times.
He didn't say, and they didn't report, did they, that the Quapaw Tower is the main dwelling place for people active in Arkansas politics? That my closest friend and advisor in my administration lives there? That another cabinet member of mine lives there? That two other major appointees of mine live there? And it's a huge building.
So No.
And, you know, if somebody, he didn't say, and you didn't point out to these people, that I don't want to get into this. I would never even answer this if a year and a half before this occurred, that woman had not hired a lawyer and threatened to sue anybody who claimed that I'd ever had anything to do with her. She hired a lawyer and threatened to sue anybody, even had him draft a complaint to sue a local radio station if they said that. She then took $150,000 and changed her story. Now, you may want to credit that or not, were it not for that, I would not even have discussed this. My view is, I told you the only facts I think you're entitled to know. If I ever had any problems in my marriage, yes. Are we in good shape now? Yes. Did we work them out? Yes.
So
if I had been divorced, would you even be bringing this up? No. Should people be punished for keeping their marriage together? No. Is that a character question? Not for me. That's my position on this whole thing. I should point out also that the Los Angeles Times and one other analyst looked at those alleged tapes and said they'd been heavily spliced, and I'll tell you why, because there was talk on there that would have exonerated me. But I can't prove that because I didn't have the clippers, because I don't tape people's private telephone conversations. Now, I am not going to discuss the details of this any further. I've said all I've got to say about it. I'm running for president.
So, throwing myself on the media sword here then, and assuming that I will not enjoy the top of your most favored media list, if I were to ask you if you had an intimate relationship with Jennifer Flowers, you would say what?
I'd say what I've always said. I told the truth, and so did she the first time. So I've given you the answer.
So that this is a lie?
Her story is not true.
So that the story about putting a newspaper at the back door so you could get up to her apartment at the Quapaw Towers is a lie?
The Jennifer Flowers story is not true. I've said it repeatedly. I have nothing else to say about it.
May I just call your attention to some of the things that appear on the tape, which you allege has been edited and you're...
No, I don't allege. The Los Angeles Times and another news organization said that it had been.
You said to her...
We're going to sit here a long time in silence, Phil. I'm not going to answer any more of these questions. I've answered them until I'm blue in the face. You are responsible for the cynicism of this country. You don't want to talk about the real issues.
Governor, I was
You can
told
answer.
that you would come here prepared to talk about your character. And you
I
have
have
not
answered my
denied.
questions about this.
If I just ask you, you are quoted on the tape as saying to her, I just think that if everybody's on record denying it, you've got no problem. Then you say, but if everybody kind of hangs tough, there's not going to be anything. And then finally you say, if they ever ask you, if you talk to me about it, you can say no. You appear on this tape to be suggesting to her that she lied. Are you going to say nothing about this?
I have already answered this. The tape was heavily edited. Her conversations say, people will believe this even if it's not true. What am I going to do? My reputation is going to be ruined. These gossips are killing us. I have been offered money to change my story. I told the people who offered me money, well, what if it's not true? Does it matter if it's not true? And they said, no, it doesn't matter if it's not true. All you have to do is say it and people will believe it. That's what's on the other end of those tapes. That was cut out. And of course, it's absolutely true. We're living in a world when if somebody says anything about you that's bad, you folks will publish it and worry about whether it's true later. Now, that's the truth. Now, but I've lost your listening device. But the main thing is, look, way back last fall, before any of this came up, before somebody had to go to the trouble to pay her $150,000, which is probably now well over $200,000 with the subsidiary television appearances and all this sort of stuff, I went to the press corps and I said, if you want somebody who's had a perfect marriage, go find somebody else. Don't vote for me. I said that. I don't believe that I or any other decent human being should have to put up with the kind of questioning you're putting me through now. Once you have been candid, once you've been open, once you have said that. I don't believe that. I think this is debasing our politics. I cannot tell you how many total strangers come up to me on the street and say, I used to believe in public life. I used to want to be in politics. I wouldn't run for office on the bet now, and I don't know how you put up with it. And I'll tell you why. Because believe it or not, Phil, there are people out there with futures that are worth fighting for. There are real problems in this country, and there are people who'd like to hear them discussed. And I've done my best to do it, and it's very difficult because people like you don't want me to.
All right, just so I understand here, are you denying these allegations, or are you saying that it's not fair to ask them?
I have given answers to that specific one. If it were not for the unique facts of that case, I wouldn't discuss any of them. I have given an answer about my life, which is sufficient. And I have been held to a different standard than any previous person in public life, near as I can figure.
Okay.
And now the press even says that I have. You'd have a lot of people that couldn't have served if they'd been put through what I've been through. Would we have been better off without all those presidents?
Yeah.
Yes, we would. I don't think you're right about that.
Governor, let me, Billy Crystal got the biggest laugh in the Academy Awards when he said, never inhaled. Here's the point, sir. Here's the point, subjecting myself once again to your wrath.
I won't give you any wrath about
The
that.
preponderance of the evidence regarding the responses that you've made to the so-called Scandal a Week information that has come out since this campaign began is that you do say things in response to many of these charges that are not believable. Anna Quindlen in this morning's New York Times likens trying marijuana but not inhaling it to trying beer but not swallowing it.
Well,
the point here is, the point, Governor, is...
That's not true. Let me listen. I'll explain it. See, but that's because all of you now think your moral duty is to try to take whatever I say and twist it into the worst possible way. I didn't say I didn't try.
But you said you didn't inhale it.
I didn't. I tried. I had never smoked a cigarette in my life. I've still never smoked a cigarette in my life. I tried to do it. I didn't. The difference between you and me is that I didn't sit there and calculate that. That woman was the first person that ever asked me the direct question, that I could recall anyway, about when I was overseas. So I said I tried it a couple of times in England. I had basically I never smoked a cigarette. I had difficulty doing that. It didn't do anything for me, and I'd always been a control freak because I grew up in an alcoholic family, which I told everybody. And I didn't want to be out of control anyway. But I tried it. I acknowledged trying it. I don't care. What difference does it make whether I inhaled it or not?
The difference is the appearance of dancing around these issues and not speaking to them.
What do you mean? I gave a direct yes answer.
You said you never violated federal laws, and you never violated the laws of Arkansas or the laws of this country.
And I didn't.
But it was a failure to speak directly to the answer. This is not about hanging the candidate. It is about asking you to comment on the pattern of tap dancing around direct answers to potentially embarrassing questions. That is the issue.
For one thing, a lot of people had answered that question. That's not embarrassing. It's not particularly damaging.
And that's what makes people wonder why you wouldn't have answered it directly in the first place.
Well, because I frankly think that sometimes you folks are so interested in this so you can make a big thing little and a little thing big. And I figured until I started running for president, I didn't know you an answer. Not you, the press. I think there are some things that people in public life just don't have to discuss. And, you know, we're living in a world today where, because people have lost total faith in the ability of any of us to come together to do anything to change each other's lives, even public life is just one series of cheap thrills after another. There was no yearning desire to know the darkest truth. This was just a cheap thrill to make the news story of the day. But, you know, I just sort of said that as an afterthought about the inhaling. It doesn't make a lick of difference whether I did or not. I either did it or I didn't. Right. I did. I was honest. I was straightforward. I gave a very direct answer to the question.
Governor, you do acknowledge and ask to at least get some points for honesty, which I think you're entitled to have, that your marriage hasn't been perfect. Throughout this imperfect part of your marriage, did you ever separate, you and Hillary?
No, and it's none of your business if we did. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you something. How would you like it? You've been here trying to affect the feelings of the American people for years now. How would you like it if I spent $500,000 looking into your life and asked you questions like this?
I guess
How would you like it?
I guess at this point in our national political life, I would have to expect it if I presume to offer myself as a candidate for the most powerful office on earth.
That's right. That's right. Now, but you would have to expect it. But what are the dimensions of your answer? I mean, do you think that I'm entitled to know everything you did in junior high and high school and all that sort of stuff?
No, I think...
Am I entitled to know everything you've done since you were 21?
I think the Constitution entitles you to answer any question you wish and to decline to answer any question you wish, and you've exercised that option. But in the process of exercising this constitutional right, you have also given yourself permission to scold media for what you perceive to be this preoccupation with what you feel are unimportant issues.
I didn't say
you say that, Governor, at a time when I don't have to tell you or the thousands of hardworking, no-pay staff members, patriotic Americans all, who are volunteering and working for your candidacy. I think there is perhaps a responsibility to speak directly to the fact that hanging over your front-running candidacy is a potential deal breaker in the fall when you run against George Bush. I ask you to understand our interest in inquiring about these matters.
Let's talk about that. I have said character is important. I believe families are important. I believe values are important. I think you're entitled to ask me what I believe in and how I will live. I think you're entitled to know quite a bit about my past. I have revealed things about my past in this campaign that I never talked about before.
You've revealed that your marriage was in trouble. What else have you revealed?
I revealed that last week...
You smoked, but you didn't inhale pot, all right? What else?
I revealed that I talked about my childhood growing up, something I never talked about before. The violence in my home, the things that happened there. I've explained it. I'm sure that had some bearing on the life that I've lived and the difficulties I had later. I've talked a lot about my personal life. The point I'm trying to make is that I believe the true measure of character is a very important issue. I want to make 2 points about that, about the general election. First of all, the true measure of character is not whether you've always been perfect, but whether you made an honest effort to have convictions, to live by them, and to do better. You know, if I live to be 90 years old, I hope the day I die I'll be a better person than I was the day before. And I don't think there's a person in this audience that would really want to be judged on any work or job on the darkest moment of his or her life. And the only thing that bothers me about this is that the obsessive discussion with it, at least you've talked about the real character issue. This other so-called scandal of the week has been ordinary looking into my record and not finding anything. As Howard Kurtz said in the Washington Post last week, I have been looked into more than George Bush. He's the president. I'll tell you one thing, if I get to the general election, at least we'll have equal time and equal opportunity. And I think that that's something...
To look at what? Equal opportunity to do what?
Well, I think that's why President Bush said in New Hampshire last fall that he thought this attack on me personally was out of bounds and shouldn't be a part of it, and if I ran against him in November, he would attack my record, but they would not be attacking personal issues which he thought were unfair. I mean, look, let's look at my life. Let's look at my life as it relates to serving in public life.
Right.
I'm a governor of a state with 2.5 million people, with a long and rich tradition of combative, even brutal politics. I had to run every 2 years for a long time. I was on the ballot 17 times in 17 years. I had in Little Rock 2 huge daily newspapers beating each other's brains out for all of that time. I was heavily scrutinized, heavily reviewed, heavily attacked, heavily criticized.
And how could you have gotten this far if
And
there were...
repeatedly supported. That's right. If I were some profoundly flawed person, incapable of being a good leader, why would I have been reelected 5 times? Why would I have been through 17 campaigns in 17 years? Why would I have been judged the most effective governor in the country by my Republican and my Democratic colleagues if there was somehow something wrong with me? The thing that bothers me is not the specifics of any of these discussions. I'm happy to engage in them. It's this attempt to say, well, if somebody says something and then somebody says something else and then somebody says something else, obviously there's something wrong. That's what I object to. And we never talk about, you know, let me say this. I got the best job in the world. Unlike a lot of people who run for office, the friends of my lifetime are still fighting for me. The reason I haven't quit is because I want to fight for the people of this country. I don't mind answering these questions.
Well,
but they're not the only
mind
questions.
answering them, no doubt.
There's some I don't mind answering more than once. I've answered some of them ad nauseum.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Think about some of your toughest stains. Your most difficult. Your most painful. For these, you might think of trying a pre-treater.
Think again of Era Plus. Here's why. This pre-treater can't beat this grass stain, even with detergent. But watch Era power through with just a spray of water. So when you think of stains, think of this. Era Plus, the power tool for stains.
I'm here to drop off my pictures of Hawaii.
Well, now at CVS, you get a double set of jumbo prints or a single set and a new roll of film for one low price.
I'll take the prints.
Take the film!
The film now!
Here's my film from Rio.
Well, now at CVS, you get a double set of jumbo prints or a single set and a new roll of film for one low price.
That better say film!
It doesn't happen overnight. It starts with a few extra expenses. Then the car loan, credit cards. Suddenly you can't keep up. A second mortgage from Personal Mortgage Corporation could pay off those bills, and the interest may be tax deductible. Call 1-800-DIAL-PMC. There's no application fee. You'll get an answer in 24 hours, even if others have turned you down. Call 1-800-DIAL-PMC. Personal Mortgage Corporation. When it comes to second mortgages, we approve.
Save this week at Wegmans with super buy one, get the second one free values. Buy 1 5-pound bag of all-purpose white potatoes, get a second bag absolutely free. Buy 1 dozen Wegmans extra large eggs, get a second dozen free with Shoppers Club card and $10 purchase. Buy 1 big 23-ounce loaf of Wegmans Foods You Feel Good About butter top bread. Get a second loaf free. Save this week at Wegmans.
Wonderful world, beautiful people like you.
To be part of the audience, please send a postcard to Donahue Tickets, care of NBC, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. Remember, postcards only, please.
Hi. I think really given the sort of pathetic state of most of the United States at this point, Medicare, education, everything else, I can't believe you spent half an hour of airtime attacking this man's character. I'm not even a Bill Clinton supporter, but I think this is ridiculous.
We're at a crucial point. Okay, we're at a crucial point in history in terms of world peace, and in this campaign, I mean, you and the other character have never seemed to have addressed anything that has to do with foreign policy for some reason. I mean, as a world leader, assuming command
That's
of...
your question. You want? Do you have a specific about foreign policy?
Yes.
What is it?
How would you feel on helping with Russia, concerning Russia and NATO?
When I leave here this morning, I'm going to the Foreign Policy Association, actually, to give a speech on that. And I think because I am President Bush is going to give a speech on the same subject today. They moved up their timetable. Let me tell you what I think we should do. I think we should help the former Soviet Union preserve democracy and freedom and convert to a free market economy. I think we should work with our European allies and our Japanese ally and help them get food and medicine, get through the cold months. I think we should put together a guarantee fund that we don't fund entirely, but that we contribute to, that will be used to convert their currency so they can trade in international affairs. And I think we should give businesses in Europe, in Asia, and in the United States incentives to go over there and start joint ventures so they can begin to trade. Now, this is good for you as taxpayers. Why? Because if we can dismantle all their nuclear weapons and dismantle ours, it cuts the defense budget by far more than we spend to help them. And because if we can build up their economy, they'll buy a lot of our products. So I think it's a very, very important moment. I agree with Richard Nixon that, I never thought I'd say that. I agree that he was absolutely right. This is a great opportunity for us, and we ought to seize it.
And we'll be back in just a moment. Governor, do you think Israel should stop building settlements on the West Bank?
I think that decision should not be enforced by the United States. I think that we ought to... I believe that Israel is now in peace talks with its Arab neighbors, and that settlements issue obviously has to be brought into those talks. And if there's going to be some peace agreement, obviously that's one of the main areas of leverage that Israel has to deal with. They want recognition. They want an end to the Arab boycott. They want some long-term guarantees of peace before they give up whatever they're doing in the disputed territories. And I think that what we ought to do now that the United States is instrumental in bringing the parties together is let them talk peace. I don't think we should publicly keep trying to deliver Israel to the Arab position in the peace talks. That's what I think.
Sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Phil. I just want to say, with respect to the commercials campaign, the TV commercials campaign that's coming up, whether or not it's against Brown now or against Bush down the road, I did want to say that as far as Governor Clinton is concerned, he's got one salient point over Dukakis from 1988, and that is that in everything that he says, even when he gets down to the details, particularly when he gets down to the details, there's a fervor, there's a fire in the belly. That's to emphasize, not to respond. Yeah, yes, my question is, have you considered, in view of the fact that when you speak, you project that fervor and that fire in the belly that Dukakis did not have you considered downplaying any possible responses to attack ads from Brown or Bush, contradicting the conventional wisdom that that's exactly what you should do in the wake of the Dukakis defeat?
I think, first of all, the answer to that is there's no general answer. It depends on the specific ad and the charge. I think what you have to do, what a politician should do, when you turn on the television and you see a negative ad. Like Brown's been running a negative ad against me here in New York. I don't know if you've seen it. You have to ask yourself, first of all, put yourself in the position of the people who are looking at it. They don't know you. They're generally suspicious of all politicians. They think we've all let them down. We get our hands in their back pocket, take their money, and then do what we please. All right? So you look at this ad and you say, number one, is this ad true? Just factually true. Number two, is it fair? Because you can distort the facts. Number three, is it relevant? Is it going to move votes? Then you make a decision. But if you answer, I think you should answer, first of all, answer the charge. and then counterattack if you can. But you can't leave a lot of these ads unanswered because, as we've seen, I mean, look at the first half an hour of this program. If you let people throw off on you and you don't answer at all, or at least you don't accommodate what they're thinking, you get swallowed up pretty quickly.
Do you regret your ad against Tsongas in Florida that suggests that he was for nuclear power and also would limit benefits for the elderly?
That's what his booklet said. No, it was absolutely accurate. It was taken right out of his booklet, which he was reprinting right to the end.
But it's also true that you see nuclear power in our future. So it's somewhat disingenuous to suggest...
It is not disingenuous. The difference is my position has always been clear. I favor natural gas, renewable resources, and energy conservation.
So does he.
Yeah, but he says that in this book that we should build many small nuclear power plants, aggressively build. What I said was, I don't believe we'll need to build anymore, but I didn't favor shutting the ones we had down.
Yes, you also accused him of threatening to limit or freeze benefits for the elderly.
Nope. His booklet says that a good beginning would be to lower the cost of living adjustments for all senior citizens below inflation every year for an indefinite period. My position is... What?
Not for all, as a suggestion from the
No,
audience.
that's what the booklet says. Then he then changed his position to higher income after the ad ran.
But you, as a governor, you signed on to a Governors Association call for at least a temporary limit on entitlements for the elderly.
We both agreed on that.
But your ad suggests that somehow, here you were in Florida, scaring the life out of elderly people by suggesting that Tsongas was going to deprive them of their entitlement.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I will wait.
He's not in the race anymore, but you go back and read the book. Read the book. Page 21, 22, 56, read the book. Everything I said was taken directly out of the book. In the mid-'80s, both of us said, at the time we thought we could balance the budget in a year, that we should freeze everything for a year, if you could do it for a year. If you look ahead, what I said was we should charge elderly people based on their ability to pay. The book says lower everybody's cost of living adjustment for a year. That's what the book says. Later, no, the book does not say upper income.
The book says
Pull it up and show me.
I don't have it with me.
Of course you can't. I read the book.
Well, you don't have it either.
Well, hang on just 1 second.
I'll tell you what. If you'll leave me your name and address, I'll send you a copy of the book. I have lots of them.
Governor, should I just...
He changed his position to say upper income, and when he did, I said I wouldn't run that ad anymore. We didn't say that in Illinois or Michigan once he made it clear that he'd rejected what his book said.
1 second here. Governor, your wife sits on the board of directors of Walmart. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, is an Arkansan and close friend. You would also want this audience to know that Mr. Walton has committed to George Bush in the fall, but has given both you and President Bush $1,000. And just a few days before the New Hampshire primary, Walmart stores announced that they will open 3 more stores in New Hampshire, and is expected to have 11 discount stores operating in New England. Should we wonder about the appearance of influence here on the part of your wife, who sits on the board of governors of Walmart, just in advance of New Hampshire?
No, I'll tell you what we did do, though. No, let me tell you.
This audience is upset at the question. Do you think it's a silly question?
Yeah. I'll tell you what I did do in New Hampshire. And I don't know that it affected any votes, but they were in terrible shape up there. Their unemployment, welfare, and food stamp rolls tripled in 3 years. And because Walmart had already announced, long before I showed up there, decided to run for president, they'd already said they were going to go into New Hampshire. In the states they operate in, they try to do business with local manufacturers, and I ran into 2, and I did refer them to Walmart and asked them to do business with them in the hope that it would generate more jobs. And I hope those things work out, because one of the things that big retailers can do for this country is to start buying more of their materials manufactured in America.
Now, without going into all the details of your investment in a condominium development in Arkansas, some 200 or 300 acres, Your wife was involved, you were involved. I ask you just this general question. Is it appropriate for the governor of a state to have, either he or his wife, have a personal investment in the development of land and property in the state that he governs?
When I entered the investment, I didn't think that it was inappropriate because the person with whom I was investing and the property itself were not subject to any kind of state regulation. As it turned out, I lost $68,000, so I wish I hadn't done it. But we didn't make any money out of it. We lost money. But I think the problem is once you get to be governor, certainly when you get to be president, you either have to make no investments or put everything in a blind trust and let someone else make investments. I didn't have enough money to have a blind trust. I think my wife and I have by far the lowest, net worth of anybody who ran this year. Probably because we made that bad investment.
But as a general rule, I assume you're saying that this is probably not a good idea.
Should not invest in anything on their own. They should have all their investments in blind trusts.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
To be part of the audience, please send a postcard to Donahue Tickets, care of NBC, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. Remember, postcards only, please.
Blatantly false.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Governor Clinton, Medicare reimbursements for primary care physicians were essentially frozen in 1984. Today, many primary care physicians are considering not taking any new elderly Medicare patients because the reimbursement does not even cover their overhead. If the doctors won't take the patients, like people like John Kingsley, how do you prepare caring for this segment of the population?
You have to have a national health care plan. And you have to, and you've got to have a uniform reimbursement system in every state. You can't have a different reimbursement state for Medicaid, Medicare, and private pay. And if we had a national system like every other advanced country in the world, you'd have a uniform reimbursement, and doctors would take Medicare patients and people that are now on Medicaid. That's what I propose to do. We are spending, almost every doctor I know admits that we're spending as much money as we need to spend, but we're spending it in the wrong places. It's going to insurance companies, healthcare bureaucracies, the government regulations. If we reorganized this system and had a national system to provide affordable health care to all, then you could afford to have uniform reimbursement for people whether they're covered in the workplace or by the government, and that's what I propose to do.
Not necessarily good news, but I know you have more questions. Here are the Vermont caucus results just in not several hours ago. Governor Brown wins Vermont in the caucus. Governor, is there a spin happening here that concerns you?
No.
And what would you...
I never went to Vermont. It's a caucus, not a primary. I never went there. All the people that were for me said, because I had to campaign here. And all the people that were for me said, look, you look at Maine, look what happened in Maine, it's going to happen in Vermont. The people who are the most activist and the most alienated are going to show up and vote. You know, stay in New York, go to Wisconsin, work there. So that's what I did.
Right. Governor,
I'm glad I got any delegates at all.
May I please? You went to Connecticut and suggested that we shouldn't stop building the Seawolf submarine. And now you come to New York, and against the good counsel of Jimmy Carter, who labored at Camp David to stop settlements, against a community that sees the Palestinian people further threatened by the continued construction of settlements on the West Bank, in a city that proudly boasts such a large Jewish voting population, you say you think Israel ought to make its own judgment on that.
No,
why should you not be vulnerable to the accusation of pandering in both of these instances?
First of all, let's deal with the Seawolf issue. Nobody accused me of pandering when last December I became the only candidate, still the only candidate in the Democratic primary, to give a foreign policy and national security speech, say here's what I think the defense budget ought to be. I call for cutbacks in the carrier groups. I call for dramatic cutbacks in Star Wars. I call for dramatic cutbacks in troops in Europe. I call for delays of any other number of other weapon systems. I adopted the position of the Democratic Congress on Seawolf, which is that we should go ahead and build a second one and move immediately in to the smaller, lighter Centurion follow-on. That was the judgment of the people that I visited with in the Congress. They had voted for it. It had nothing to do with pandering and everything to do with the fact that a lot of people thought the most cost-effective way to move into the Centurion was to go ahead and keep the production line open, finish the design of the Centurion, and move directly into it. That is very different from what you just suggested.
So in order to efficiently develop the Centurion, we've got to build another Seawolf?
If you shut the Seawolf down, lay all those people off, and then you have to come back a year and a half or 2 years later and find them and hire them all back, you're going to wind up, according to what the defense experts told me, spending about as much money as you would if you just built a second submarine. That was the advice I got from defense experts. And we sat around a table in November and again in December and discussed it at length, argued about it back and forth. I took what I thought was good advice. So we come to Connecticut. I couldn't have known I'd even be in Connecticut then. Now let me just give you another example. On the Israel issue, I've always said that the settlements present a problem. They're just not the only problem. And once you get the peace process going, should the United States say, yes, they're talking, but we don't care, we're going to fix this on our own, then Israel doesn't have anything to negotiate with in the peace process, but what do we care?
So although the settlements present a problem, you're not going to call for their cessation because you want this to be a part of the peace process and should be a negotiable issue between
Absolutely.
the Israelis and
If the peace process breaks up, we can always go back trying to negotiate directly with the Arabs and negotiating directly with the Israelis. But right now, what we're doing is making things worse because we only hit on one side and not the other. It undermines the prospect of peace, in my opinion.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Governor, Congress is going through a terrific crisis. There's going to be a lot of mismanagement and a lot of changeovers by next year. What plans or alternate plans do you have to counteract that?
To counteract the changeover in Congress? Well, it won't all be bad, will it? I mean, we hope it'll be positive. What I think you'll find is that there are a lot of people in Congress, most of whom are not very famous, who would turn this country on a dime if given the leadership to do it. I agree that special interests and perks and pay raises and all that cause a lot of problems in Congress. But the major problem is that the Congress and the President have not been working together to solve the problems of this country because we don't have a president who believes that we need a national economic strategy. So I think if you give leadership, and that's why I've tried to be so specific in this campaign. If you give specific examples of what you want to do, then Congress can know what the people voted for and proceed to enact it.
Yes. Governor, I'm teaching one of the first minority issue classes in the state of Utah. What will you do as what will you do as a future president to help bring up some awareness about the different issues that minorities have?
I will try, first of all, to aggressively address the problems that disproportionately affect minorities in this country. Secondly, I'll try to do what I'm doing in this campaign, to go every place in the country and tell people that there's too much racial and ethnic division in America. We have to get over those divisions. We have to come back together. And that if we don't, we're going to be in deep trouble. I think we have not had a president in a long time who would associate himself with trying to solve these problems because the media handlers for the Republicans tell them never to be associated with bad news. If I'd been president, I'd have gone to Thomas Jefferson High School, I think, after those kids got shot there. We need a president who will say, we got to stop killing our kids. We got to say these are all our children. We got to say we're all in this together.
Is Mrs. Clinton continued to be publicly active in the campaign? We haven't seen her.
Yes, she's been working like crazy in New York the last couple of days. She took a week off and went home to be with our daughter.
Were you concerned about her being misunderstood with regard to the Tammy Wynette remark and baking cookies?
Very much.
Tell me.
Well, my wife for 20 years has been associated with the Children's Defense Fund, and for the last several years has been the board chair of it. If I'd heard her say once, I've heard her say 100 times, she wanted women to have choices. She wanted women to be able to raise their children successfully, whether they worked or whether they stayed at home, and she valued both decisions. Her mother was a homemaker, and she respected that. What she was saying was she didn't want to be forced, as First Lady of Arkansas, not to practice law. That's the only thing she said. I think the way it was read is like she was slamming people who decided to stay home and raise their children. We believe the most important job in society is rearing and educating children.
Mr. Clinton, what is your stand?
Hold it, please. You're taking time.
What is your stand on affirmative action?
I am opposed to quotas. I'm in favor of affirmative action. I supported the Civil Rights Act of 1991. But in order to have real racial equality in this country, you're going to have economic empowerment. We need a strategy to go in and deal from the grassroots up with the educational, the economic, and the social problems that people have who are disproportionately poor in this country.
Do you support a voucher system for schools, public schools?
I support public school choice. I'm against vouchers to go to private schools.
So you disagree with the Bush administration's position?
I disagree with that. We are underfunding public education compared to other countries. You can
Let me give you a chance. Governor, let me give you a chance to make your point uninterrupted. We'll do that in just a moment.
Okay.
Program, send $3 check or money order to Donahue Transcripts, 1535 Grand Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
Why doesn't Congress recognize Jesse Jackson as a senator, even though he was elected by the people? Next, Donahue.
With only 30 seconds left, Governor, Clinton wanted to say.
First, I want to say I've had a good time today, and I thank all of you for being such a good audience. The second thing I want to say is this is a really important election. And whether I have the character to be president is one issue, but it's not the only issue. The real issue is whether we have the will and the courage to change course in this country, because we've got economic decline and social disintegration, and we can do better. I want you to help me do that.
Services provided and promotional fees paid by the following.